All right, so we are somewhere in Unit 4, so we're ending the material that will be on test 1. We will have Unit 5, so at least 2 meetings after this before we have a test. So we could have, we may finish 4 today, depends on how many questions you have. Then we'll do Unit 5, which will be 17 and 20. And then we start to have to look to schedule our first test. And that will be like 24 or 1 or 3 or somewhere in there. And so you will tell me if you have any other major exams in that time. So you might have me, and I might be giving an exam, and I know I'll keep as best I can my classes balanced, but I need to know from you if you have something from Kui, Wong, Kylie, Redmond, if you have any tests coming up. So I would try to avoid those days. It will be a 75-minute test, sort of at this time. I will give you some things to build with the simulation circuitry. But there'll also be binary number questions and filling out truth tables and doing Karnaugh-Maps. So you will need to do some of the simulation stuff, but I will try to minimize that, but I won't eliminate it. So you have to be ready to do that. So however you're going to do it, if you're going to stay at home and do the remote version or try to install something so you have it for at home, you just need to figure that out before we have this test. There is some simulation stuff. The class is officially face-to-face, and so, I mean, officially you're supposed to be here. I'm allowing people on a daily basis to make that decision, and that you may have made always a decision to be online and then suddenly for the test want to show up. I'm supposed to have assigned seats. I have kept track of where the people who tend to come, where they sit. So if you're going to suddenly show up on the day of the test, which we still have to decide when that is, but if you're going to show up for the day of the test here, and you might want to for the software reasons, then you need to let me know that you're going to do that so I can sort of give you a seat that's not somebody else's normal seat. All right. So again, every day you're allowed to make this decision of come by Zoom or come in person, and you may be making a different decision on the day of the test. And if you decide to continue to stay at home for the test, you just have to be prepared to do some simulating. Okay. So we did some talking about multiplexing. If I just move on to new material, I would talk about demultiplexing. But first, I would like to ask if you have any questions. I don't know. I'm waiting for you guys to talk to me about other tests you might have coming up. But we're thinking 24 or the 1st or the 3rd of March. So somewhere of those like 3 days. This is a Monday, Wednesday class. I want to give, I'm in my mind finishing Unit 4 today, but maybe you'll ask so many questions that I don't feel I finished 4, and then it would extend. So even right now, if I finish Unit 4 today, those are the days in play, the 24th, the 1st, and 3rd. But if you guys ask me so many questions today, then I don't really feel I finished unit 4, then I would, and we could finish 4 and then come back and you have a million questions. So you can't ask, you know, you can't do that for maybe 2 periods, but you could do that for 1 period of just asking question after question after question, and that would be perfectly fine. If that were to happen, then the dates would be the 1st or the 3rd or the 8th. So if there ended up to be a whole day of just questions and I didn't finish the unit, or even after I finished the unit, if there happened to be a whole day of questions and I don't get to the 5th unit, then that whole range of dates gets, you know, pushed back one by 1 day, but that's not a single day because of the way we meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Yes. So it's going to be some binary number stuff. It's going to be some truth table stuff. Sometimes read it straight out of just sum of products or product of sums. There's going to be some Karnaugh-Map, so there'll be some simplifying. There's in a multiplexor and a demultiplexor, the newest material, there's no sort of my varying it that much. There's not much I can vary it by. A 4-to-1 mux is a 4-to-1 mux. It's a matter of, do you understand how to use the circuit? There's resistors and combinations of resistors. I usually ask at least 1 question from the book. So it'll come from the first 4 chapters of the book, because each unit has a chapter summary in there. Yes. Any other questions? I have at least 1 person wants me to do some going over some Karnaugh-Map stuff.
I had a question.
Yes.
I believe you said before, did you say that basically we could turn in assignments anytime before the first exam?
That is true. You will not get feedback from me if you do that. If you just turn them in like, oh, here's the test, and the night before you give me 4 labs, when I get to them, they will be eligible for full credit. So you will not get feedback from me. So if it's all wrong, that's on you. But it is possible for you to do that.
Okay.
It's very inadvisable, but it is possible. It is within the rules. Every year people do it, and some regret it. There's some very smart people who can pull it off, and most people can't, but they just fall into the trap. What can I say? All right. I have 1 outstanding question to at least go over some more Karnaugh-Map, especially with the don't cares. That seems to be the absolute trickiest. It is very subtle. I think I was getting one of my own problems wrong for maybe 2 or 3 years in a row, and then one of my students got it right, and I'm like, oh, damn. I've been doing it wrong for a while. They can be subtle. The subtler your mistake, the less I take off. So if you made a very subtle mistake, I'll take off like 1/4 of a point or something. If you make a bigger mistake, then more points. Any questions other than the Karnaugh-Map, or should I start with the Karnaugh-Map? I'll start with the Karnaugh-Map, okay. So let's look at that lab. I think that's B. And I'm just going to make up some fake problem here. What am I going to do? So I'm going to delete these columns. Okay, here's some. It's not going to be this. It's just some Karnaugh-Map thing. I'll call it Q. Why not Q? So I'm going to do some Q thing. And I'm going to change these so it's different. All right. So my output is Q. How do you want me to figure out the Qs? Should I just do some weird numbery thing? Do you want to yell them out, or what do you want to do? Thanks. All right, so I'll just do some weird calculator thing. So I'm going to do, I want 10 of them. So I'm going to go to science. I'm just going to do some weird sciencey thing. How about the square root of 2, a 1 on? Okay, so I have some number, and I'm multiplying it by 2 raised to the 10th, because I want 10 bits. And I have 724. I'm going to go over to programmer and put in 724, Control V. Okay. So here's my completely just made up, fairly arbitrary bit string. 0, 0, 0, no, 0, 0, 1, 0. Oh no, I didn't want those first two zeros, sorry. Because I wanted that up here, this is 12 bits and I only wanted 10. Sorry. So I'm doing 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. There we go. So that is this just made up thing. Okay. And then we'll play some more. I'll just come down here with the table and say, pick out a group and let's find the pattern for it. But let's do it this way first. So we got a map from, say again? Zoom in. View, bigger, view, page width. There we go. Okay. So these are just made up. This is just some Karnaugh problem with don't care values, and these are just made up. So I just called it Q. Okay. I'm going to fill this in. Where am I at? No, I don't. So these first ones, fill up here. These go here. And then these two will go here. Okay. So it's 1, 0, skip to the end, 1 and 1. It's 0, 1, skip to the end, 0 and 1. And then skip to the bottom and it's 0 and 0. Is that okay? It's 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1. 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. Are we okay? Somebody needs to mute themselves. All right. So now we are looking to find the blocks, to make them as big as possible, to give us the most simplification without introducing any extra blocks. So what do you see? What groups do you want to identify? What ones do you want to go after? This one where I'm at? The third column. The third column. You want to go down, okay. So there's a pair there, and then we ask the question, can you do better? You can do better because we have the two below it are our choice. We can't go horizontal because of this zero. We can't go horizontal because of this zero, but we can go down, and these are our choice. So we can fill them in, blah, blah. And we can't do better than that because, again, now we have a whole column. We have to go over horizontally one way or the other, but we have some zeros. So it's got to be a solid rectangle, all ones. Okay. So I like to describe my groups so I'm clear what group I'm working on. And this is the all rows, third column. Okay, so this is the group we're talking about. It's all the rows. So once we've identified the block of outputs, we turn our attention back to the inputs, and we see which inputs have changed and which stay the same. W changes from row to row. And since we have all the rows, W definitely changes. So we throw it out. X also changes from row to row. And so then we throw it out. We're only in one column. Y changes when you change, Y can change when you change columns, but we're not changing columns, so Y can't change. Same thing for Z. Z can't change because we're only in one column. It's Y is 1 and Z is 1, so it's YZ. And that brings up a rule, is that if you deal with a one that's all by itself, then it's going to take 4 terms. If you deal with a pair, you're going to end up with 3 terms. If you deal with a quartet, or a foursome, you're going to end up with 2 things. And if you have a group that's as big as 8, you're only going to be left with 1 thing. And if all 16 things were 1, it would just be trivially true. And there would be no inputs. It would just be connected to high without any inputs. Okay. So those, we have 3 ones we haven't dealt with. So what do you want to deal with next?
You can choose the 2 ones in the corners.
These 2 ones in the corners, okay? And we always ask, can we do better? Can we make it a full row? No. Can we wrap to the other corners? No, because of this 0. So I think that's as good as it's going to get. We looked below, and there are zeros. We looked below wrapping, and there was a 0. We looked horizontal, and there was a 0. So we've sort of exhausted our possibilities for extending this group. So it seems to be, what is that? The first row and the first and last column. And then we say, what are we going to keep? What are we going to throw away? What stays the same and what changes? So we're in a single row. W changes when you, W can change when you change rows, but we're not changing rows. So we have to keep W. It's a 0, so that's W prime. X can change when you change rows, but we're not changing rows, so it can't change. And so it's X, and because X is a 0 for that row, it's prime. X prime. And now we turn our attention to the Y and Z, and we're in the first and last column. Y changed. Y was a 0 in the first column and a 1 in the last column. That's the guy who changes. That's the guy we're getting rid of. And then Z was 0 in the first column and 0 in the last column. Z did not change, and it's a 0. So that's Z prime. And then, so we dealt with that guy and that guy. So there's one remaining. So we have to put this remaining one into a group. What's that group going to be? Groups are allowed to overlap. So that one that's remaining for us to deal with, its group, its block, can involve ones that we've already taken care of. That's allowed. So what's our last block?
You can use the one on the right.
So you're going to use this one and this one?
Yes.
Okay, and then we always ask the question, can we do better? Can I go horizontal? No, because of this 0. Can I go vertical up? No, because of this 0. Can I go vertically down? Here's what I have right now, a pair, and I'm asking the question, can I go vertically down and make a group? I'm getting somebody nodding in the back of the room saying yes. Because this is a don't care, we get to choose. And so if we choose it to be one, we'll be a larger group and get more simplification. Larger groups, larger blocks, more simplification. We always want that. So we choose that to be a 1. So now we have this quartet. And then we say, can that be any bigger? Can I go vertical? No, there's a 0. Can I go horizontal? No, there's a 0. Then we're trapped. So that's as good as it's going to get. So it'll be the middle 2 rows. Middle 2 columns. Okay, so here we are, middle 2 rows, middle 2 columns. When you've identified the block of outputs, you turn your attention back to the inputs and ask who changes and who stays the same. W changes with rows, and it is changing here. It was 0 and then 1, so we throw it away, no W. X does not change from row 2 to row 3. It changes, it can change with rows, but not these 2 rows. It stays the same with these 2 rows. So we're keeping it, and it's a 1, so it's just X. Now we're doing the middle 2 columns. Y changes. It was 0 and then 1. It changes. The thing that changes, we throw away. That's our simplification. And then we have Z. Z does not change. It was 1 both times, so we keep it, and it's just a Z. And then we should really put them together and say YZ plus W prime X prime Z prime plus XZ, like that. I missed a plus. Okay. So when we're done, and then now we're finally done. Well, no, I should do one more thing. And I should say that these other choices of mine, I should choose to be zeros. Because if I choose them to be 1, then I'll have another group I have to deal with, and I don't want that. And that's usually the subtlest part, is choosing the don't cares. You get in the habit of, oh, they're mostly zeros, or oh, they're mostly 1s. But you've got to be more careful. And again, there are subtle ones where I won't take off much because they're subtle and easy to miss. And then there are ones I think are more obvious. So I take off more points the more obvious I think it is. Questions on this one? All right. What I want to do down here is just give you the opportunity to ask me to say, what if the group were this, what would the expression be? So this, there's nothing filled in this one, but you can say, what if it were the 3rd row? What if it were the last 2 rows? What if it were the 4 corners? So he's asking about the 4 corners. What if it were this? if that were my group, the four corners. Okay, so this is nothing to do with C. I'm just doing some what if things. What if it were the four corners? I might also say first and last row, first and last column. Okay, so the four corners, how would I do the four corners? So that is the group. They are a group because of the wrapping property. So this cell is thought of next to this cell, and it's also thought of as next to this cell by wrapping horizontally. This guy's next to this guy by wrapping vertically, and this guy's next to that guy and next to that guy. So that is a group by wrapping, and it's the first and last row and the first and last column. So I usually do rows and then columns. So W in the first row is a 0 and the last row is a 1. It changed, so I'm going to throw it away. X in the first row is a 0 and then the last row is a 0, so I'm going to keep it. And it's going to be X prime. I'm a bad page break here. Okay. The first and last column, Y was a 0, then Y was a 1. So Y changed, we throw it away. Z was a 0 and stayed a 0, so we keep it and it's Z prime. So if we were doing the four corners, that would be the expression, X prime, Z prime. Are there any other groups that you wanted to ask me about? Everybody understands this perfectly, right? Other questions on this, on Karnaugh maps in general, or other questions that have come up? Now that I've mentioned the test, I will say that the first problem on the test will be a resistor network. Probably harder than lab 3, but easier than lab 4. I will probably give you the circuit, but ask you to add meters using the simulator. And remember that ammeters go in series and voltmeters go in parallel. Okay. Again, I'm willing to go on and finish up demultiplexors and decoders if you guys are telling me you don't have any other questions. All right. So let me find, I made previously a MUX. It's in documents. So I did not give this to you because you have to make it. It's part of lab 4. Okay, so this was, we talked about the last time, this was a multiplexor. There were two select, sometimes I call them select, sometimes I call them address inputs A and B. Two inputs, two binary inputs, 2 bits can be in 4 combinations. They can be low, low, or 0, 0. They can be 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1. And we're going to think of those combinations as binary numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to think of the data. There were 4 data inputs, and we're thinking of assigning numbers to them. So this first guy, we assigned the address 0, then address 1, address 2, and address 3. And we set up this logic such that right now it was A and B are both high. So that's high, high, or 1, 1, which is 3. So then switch 3 should be the one who is communicating with the output of this circuit. So 3, if I'm typing a 3, you can see the switch number 3 as I type 3 going up and down. And you can see the probe lighting up and down. You can see 1, I'm typing a 1 right now. 1 has nothing to do with it. 0 has nothing to do with it. And 2 has nothing to do with it. But 3 does. But if I change the address, let me make A0 and B1, that now we're choosing somebody else. Are we choosing 0? No. Are we choosing 1? Yes, we're choosing 1. Are we choosing 2? No. Are we choosing 3? No, we're choosing 1. And that is the job of the multiplexer. You have things for data sources, 0, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to use A and B to pick which one gets through. That's it. That's what a multiplexer does. So I will ask you on the lab to build this, and then I will ask you to choose data 0 and have a low come through. So what would you do? A is 0, B is 0, and the data that is selected, which is 0, is low, and then this is not lit up. And then I'll say, keep the address 0, and then but make the data high, and then see it lit up. I'm just going to walk you through the first couple to show you, for you to poke at the keys and make sure you understand. So when you're choosing address 0, it doesn't matter what's going on down here with 1, 2, and 3. You might want to make them all low to just sort of convince yourself they're not responsible for the light because they're not high. But it didn't matter whether they were high or low. That's the whole point. We're choosing 0. That's the one we're choosing right now. That was a multiplexer. I'm going to save this circuit and turn it into a de-multiplexor because it's very much the same. But do you have any questions on this, on the multiplexer, before I move to the demultiplexer? Okay. So I'm going to do a file save as. I'm going to change it to DEMUX. And what am I going to do? There are going to be 4 outputs. So I'm going to get rid of this OR gate, by OR gate. I'm going to have 4 probes. Copy, copy, copy. Okay. Now the system called my outputs X1, X2, X3, and X4. You must remember, and maybe we'll try to relabel them, but you must remember that our addressing always starts at 0. I'm going to make this. So if I say choose, these are now outputs. If I say choose the output 0, I mean this one. So I'll try to come back and change the label so they make a little more sense to us. But it doesn't matter how they're labeled. It matters how the circuit works. And we have, with A and B, we're allowed to make 4 combinations, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. And if I say 2, I mean put A and B in the combination that corresponds to 2. If I say 3, I don't mean this one, I mean this one, because it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. A de-multiplexor has one data input. So I'm going to get rid of 3 switches and keep 1. Now here's one data switch. I'm going to not make it key 0. I'm just going to call it D for data. And everybody goes to the same, all the outputs would get the same data. So my blue and my green here, they don't change because they were about addressing. This A and B, and these NOT gates and these AND gates, they were about making all the possible combinations of A and B. 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. The addressing part is the same for a multiplexer and a demultiplexor. The demultiplexor has one piece of data coming in. It goes to all of the AND gates. And then there are 4 outputs. So right now I'm low, low. Let me turn it on. I'm at address low, low, and my data is coming through to this. This is the 0 date. This is the 0 output. If I change my data, that's the one that's changing, not any of the others. If I make B high, it's address 1. That gets the output, nobody else. If A is high and B is low, that is 3. 3 now gets the data. And if they're both high, if A and B are high, that's 3. And now it's address output 3 that gets the data. Okay, let me see if I can do this relabeling. So I'm going to click on this probe, go to the properties, there's a label. Let's see if I can change it to 0. Will it let me? The simulation is running, okay. It did let me change it though. Now, when you build yours, you have to build one. I'm not going to give it to you. If you don't change the labels, that's okay. They're just labels. But if you don't understand which one's 0, which one's 1, which one's 2, and which one's 3, and you give it to me on a lab or even worse on a test, then I'm going to mark it wrong. So do you have to relabel? No. But if it helps prevent you from making a mistake, then you should do it. One more time, I've said, I think in the past, like when you first learned to program and you say had a list or an array and the indices started at 0, it drove you nuts when you started. But it's sort of built into the very hardware of when we start counting things, we start counting at 0. So, we're counting here with A and B. We have the 4 combinations and one of them is 0, 0. Therefore, one of the combinations is 0. That's the lowest one in normal counting. And so we start at 0. Sort of, that was like, that decision was like cooked into the hardware. You can't. Okay. So this is the de-multiplexor. The de-multiplexor has address or select, pick which one gets the data, and then it has a data, and then it had these 3 input AND gates, and there was no OR gate here. We're so used to looking at product of sums, and we expect after we have a bunch of AND gates to have an OR gate. In a demultiplexor, you do not have the OR gate because you have 4 separate outputs. So don't turn them into one output. A demultiplexor has multiple outputs. Leave it go. That's the way it is. Questions on a demultiplexor? I'm just going to announce that if you take away this input, take away the data input, and make these all 2-input AND gates, you'll have what's known as a decoder. So a decoder can pick something. It's not data that's getting through, but you have a bunch of things and you're picking one. You're not picking necessarily a destination for data, but you're picking something. This A-B logic is about picking. And so if you take away the data, you still have the picking. Where are places where we have picking? We have a part of the computer known as RAM, memory or random access memory. And there are a bunch of places where you can put information. So there's a bunch of what we call a register. We haven't made a register yet, but a register is just a place where you can put a value. Think of in your programs, you make a variable. A variable often corresponds to a register or maybe a few registers, depending on how many bits you need. So now memory, RAM, is a bunch of registers, and then you get to pick one. So you get to, when we say RAM, the acronym means Random Access Memory. And what we mean by random access is not that you're just going to pick one at random. That's not what we mean. We mean that we can get, as far as the computers is concerned, we might as well be picking one at random. To us, it's not random. To us, it's some choice made by our program. It makes sense to us. But as far as the computer is concerned, it might as well be random. And how do we get that random one? We supply its address. So we have a bunch of registers. We say, I want what's at memory location 54, and then I supply the 54, and out comes whatever value was stored at 54. Well, how do I put in 54, how do I do the selecting? By a decoder. So I have a decoder attached to a bunch of registers. Each register has some information in it, and then I pick which one I want. So when we say random access memory, we mean that we're going to supply an address, and then whatever address we happen to supply, we're going to get the value at that address. So you could also call it addressable memory. And the way we get from addressing to supplying address to getting a value at an address is a decoder. So you have something, you supply a number. We've been supplying numbers with this AB. And then you pick out something that corresponds to that address. So if we took away this data and made a decoder, but connected these outputs somehow to these registers, we would be picking a register. And then we would have random access memory. Now, we haven't said what a register is or what it means to pick a register. I understand that, but this notion of addressing comes up a lot, and I'm just want you to know that this is not just something I made up to torture you with. This is like at the heart of how computers operate. One of the main features of memory, of a computer, is memory, and memory works by addressing the values, and this is how addressing works. Questions?
So what we see on screen right now is the de-multiplexor, right?
The de-multiplexor. And if I took away the data and made these 2-input AND gates, I would have a decoder. So that's another part of the lab. So I have you make the de-multiplexor. So I'm not going to give this to you, but you can see it right there. You can rewatch this. I'll download this video and then upload it to YouTube and make, connect it in Canvas, and you can just make what I made. This is the de-multiplexor. It's part of the lab. You have to make it. I think it's 4B. Then you have to make a decoder. So you just take the data away and make the 3-input ANDs, 2-input ANDs, but you still keep 4 outputs. That will make it a decoder. A decoder by itself doesn't make any sense. because what are you picking? But it is important because we have to know how to pick so that we can pick things when we have them to pick. So we will eventually have registers, and we might have a bunch of registers and we want to pick one. And now this is how the picking is done. Registers are a little more complicated, so we haven't gotten there yet, but the idea of picking is fairly straightforward, and it's like it's a topic we're ready for. It's pretty much just a truth table. You can tell that this is really 4 truth tables because there are 4 outputs. All right. Any other questions? All right. Let me save that. I'm going to make something new, which I'm also not going to give you. Very mean today. I'm going to save it. I'm going to call it MUX DEMUX. I need this to be sort of longer, so I'm going to right click, go to the properties of my workspace, and make this wider. Make it crazy big, 22. It's probably going to scroll like mad and drive me crazy, but what can I do? All right. I'm going to go find my multiplexor. Where is my multiplexor? Open. There's my MUX. So I'm going to take my multiplexor and copy it. I'm going to go over the multiplexor, de-multiplexor, and I'm going to paste. There's my multiplexor. Then I'm going to make some room over here, and I'm going to go to my de-multiplexor. And I'm going to copy that. All right, and I'm going to put that over here. Okay, so I have a multiplexor and then a de-multiplexor. I'm going to change, I don't want this to be AB and this to be the same AB. So I'm going to change this to something else. I don't know, W and W and X or something crazy. Okay. So I just took the multiplexor and then the de-multiplexor. I'm going to do what? I'm going to take away this data switch, but I'm going to place a junction, and I'm going to connect the output of the multiplexor to the input, the data input of the de-multiplexor. And now I can choose any of 4 sources to communicate with any of 4 destinations. Okay, so somebody shout out a number between 0 and 3. 2, okay, so we want source 2. So that will be, right now I'm choosing source 3. We can see that. I have to turn it on. Right now I have high, high. So that was source 3. That's making the light blink, but he wanted 2. So I think that is A high and B low. And now 2 is the chosen source. So 2 is right now, 2 is communicating with 3, but give me an output. Give me a number again between 0, 1, 2, and 3. 1, okay. So we want to choose 0, 1, 2, 3. Now my X's are all sort of screwed up because of this, but all right. I want to choose, he said 1, which is, it's 0, 1, 2, 3. And so I need this guy to be low, W to be low, and X to be high. And there is, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So I have over here, I have 0, 1, 2, 3. I have 2 communicating with 1. Source 2 communicating with destination 1. All right, let's show it. So let's make all the data low to everybody's. All the data is low, and then 0 is not doing anything. 1 is not doing anything. 2 is making things blink. So 2 is the chosen source. Let's just make sure 3 doesn't do anything. 3 doesn't do anything. So 2 is the guy who's getting through as a source, and he is going to 0, 1, 2, 3. Let me see if I can fix my labels. Let's make this guy, am I still on? No. Let's make his label, I don't know, 7. So then I can make this guy's label 0, 1. And again, you don't have to do this. I'm just doing this so that I'm being as clear as I can be. If you understand it, you understand it, but I'm trying to be as clear as I can be by having the labels match the numbers I'm talking about. Okay, so here we have the input, the source 2. I labeled them with their key values. So the switch that is controlled by a 2 is the data that's getting through. This is the shared channel. So I have a bunch of data in data sources. They share this channel. I pick one of them. We picked 2. That data gets through, and now somebody takes it off the channel, and that was 1. So 2 is communicating with 1. That is also on the lab. So I think 4B, make a demultiplexor, make a decoder, have your multiplexor talk to your demultiplexor. And this is what I mean, and this is how it works. Are there any questions? All right, I have covered what I wanted to cover for multiplexors and demultiplexors. In terms of lab 4, there's 4A is multiplexors, 4B is demultiplexors, decoders, and putting the multiplexor and the demultiplexor together. And then C, part 4C, is just another resistor network, more complicated than what we had in lab 3, but it's not anything new material-wise. So I've covered the material in terms of me sitting up here and asking myself questions. So now we're back to you asking questions. If anybody has a question you want to ask in front of the whole class, please ask. And then if not, I will sort of end here, but I will hang out for the remaining 17, 18 minutes, whatever it is, and answer individual questions. So I can come out to people who have something up on their computer in the room, or we can share screens with people who are on Zoom. So I'm going to ask, is there anything you want me to go over up here as a group? as part of the recording, so my answer will be recorded and you can view it again and again. And it could be as simple as do another one of those things, or. And I'm getting nothing in the room and nothing on chat and nobody speaking up.
So when the multiplexor is a 2, you have to change something on the de-multiplexor as well?
No, A and B, the keys A and B are what chooses the source. And for me, W and X choose the destination. So give me a new source, 0, 1, 2, or 3.
3.
3. Okay, so that would be high, high. And so I have A high, I'm going to make B high. And now it's, oh, I'm not on. So I should turn it on. So now I have A high and B high, so I'm choosing 3. So 2, I'm clicking 2, 2 is doing nothing. But if I click 3, it's doing something. I haven't done anything with W and X. So my destination is still 1. But A and B control my source. And you told me 3, which is 1, 1. So I made them both high. And 3 is getting through. We can see that by this. Here's the shared channel. Here's a probe on the shared channel. And we can see that 3 is getting through. Now, I'm going to ask you for a destination. Give me a number, 0, 1, 2, or 3.
0.
0. So 0 is low, low. So the W is low. Let me make the X low. And now we can see that the 0th destination is lit up. And also, if I come over here on 3, whatever my 3 switch is, that's my information. It's coming from 3 through the shared channel, and it's getting through to 0. But they are addressed independently. I can pick anybody from here, talk to anybody from there. So this is controlling the demultiplexor destination, picking one of 4 destinations. A and B are picking the source. So this is the multiplexor address, picking a source. This is the demultiplexor address, picking a destination. Any other questions? So build it, play with it. And if you can do this and understand this, then that's like the multiplexor and I'm going to ask you sort of like, what is a multiplexor or what is a demultiplexor, or some like there are questions like that, like, I will describe something and then take out the word and you have to say, oh, he's describing a multiplexor, he's describing a demultiplexor. And then in terms of, I can't sort of change it other than make it an 8-to-1 mux, or or over here you would call it a 3-to-8 DEMUX. That's about all I can change. But if I won't have you build it from scratch because I'm going to try to minimize the building. So this would be something I would tend to give you and see if you can operate it. So if you understand what I'm doing right now, how I'm operating this, if you understand what the definition of a multiplexor is, what the definition of a demultiplexor is, and if you understand what I'm doing in operating the circuit, then we've got it. Then we're good. You're going to get the multiplexor demultiplexor question on the test. And I tell you from past experience that most people don't. I hope I was clear. I hope you'll build this sometime before the night before and remember that we talked about it. And I hope you'll all get it right. That would be amazing. But it's the last lab, and I have the people who are doing it the last lab at the last minute on the last day just before the test. And they never get to play with the circuit and they can't make it work. Questions? All right. One more time, any questions before I stop recording? I'm going to hang out for questions, but this is the last one in the recording. Going once, going twice, sold. All right.